Hello and welcome to the ESI Africa studio. Today we are talking to Jay Bhagwan, who is the Senior Research Manager for Water Quality and Health at the Water Research Commission. Hello, Jay.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
And I am just going to dive right into this. How do current water and sanitation tariffs affect businesses, and what pricing reforms could we actually introduce to help both the private sector and the water service provider to smooth over this?
So let's start with the understanding that water is a very small input into many industrial and commercial activities relatively to other forms of uses in the country. So when you look at the national map of water usage, industry and commercial utilizes about 20% of all the water in the country, compared to agriculture that uses about 65% and domestic about 30%, and the other things were recreation and those kind of stuff, etc. So it's a very small demand, but it's a very important demand. It needs a very high assurance in terms of availability and quality, because having water 24/7 is important for the industrial processes to be active, and whatever they do in terms of processing their products is very important that water is available. Then the quality is the other element, because variation in quality can have a huge impact on the industrial processes. So if you're in the agro processing, there's very strict regulations around the quality of water and contamination and so forth and so forth. So for industry, the bigger issues are those aspects around assurance of supply and quality. Relative to pricing in a municipality, I mean, a household tariff for water in a municipality averages around 20 Rand a kiloliter. You're seeing variations in different municipalities for industry from about 100 Rand to 200 Rand a kiloliter. So it looks a lot, but I think when you compare it to international standards, I think it's a fairly fair tariff. However, we're starting to see that period of cheap and affordable water evolving. We're coming into stages where our municipal systems are being challenged because of aging. We're starting to see more pressure on competitive usage because populations are growing, economy is growing, so the demand for water is going up. And with all these kind of factors of climate change induced issues, etc., it starts pushing the cost of water very quickly higher and higher as the input cost. And that definitely starts affecting industries in a big way. Now, there are opportunities, okay, because like I said, the input costs of water for industries is relatively not that high. But the bigger opportunity is that while industry uses a small proportion of that water, they are amongst the largest polluters, through their activities. So they produce some really crazy cocktails that need to be managed. Now, historically, the sanitation tariff for industries was not that high because as an incentive, municipalities used to blend a very polluted load with a household wastewater stream to dilute it so that you could treat it much more effectively. But I think we're seeing that that's becoming problematic, and the responsibility is now being shifted to industry as a drive to reduce their footprint around pollution and think about circular processes, about recovery, about reuse, because a lot of the kind of constituents, the chemicals they need are being flushed away and they can derive much better. So there is an area of opportunity in that space to come up with some more creative tariff that incentivizes these things.
Okay. Now, you just mentioned circular economy, actually. So, what policies or regulations could we use to make it easier or safer for companies to actually reuse water to create that circular economy?
Now, we sit in a very privileged situation because there is no regulation around reuse. So it's gung ho. Use the opportunity. I mean, you're not dictated by any policy, but your business conscious and your environmental consciousness. Because we're moving into the space where we are getting in South Africa into an area where water is becoming limiting. And we have to find ways to become more efficient. And the lowest hanging fruit is water reuse. Now, it's definite that government in many catchments is not going to be able to afford any more allocations to already existing allocations, and they will try their best to meet economic growth, etc., etc., etc. So straight away the opportunity for accessing and becoming more resilient and getting assurance is to start diversifying and look at things like reuse, recovery, circular economy as part of the business and part of the equation that builds a more longer term sustainability for your operations. So yes, there is no regulatory environment, and I'm hoping that they don't come up with one because it might disincentivize industry from taking the first leap, into the space. But rather focus on the effluent side and find ways to strengthen that part of the incentives that drives people towards cleaner production, reducing their footprint. And there's ways to do it. I mean, creative sanitation tariffs that are incentivized to give you greater affinity to then recover and reuse are the ways to influence. But that also changes the water balance for a industrial complex, but also changes the water balance for the municipality. So there's a win-win in every angle, because if big users start reusing, your infrastructure gets more life. Your treatment plants have greater efficiency because there's no high cost for treating very complex influent streams, etc. So you got to see the big chain of opportunities that this would bring.
Okay, so you mentioned water reuse. Now, public opinion can often be a barrier to that.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the ways we can improve the understanding and build trust around this idea of recycling water?
Yeah, look, it's a matter of time that most of us on this planet, will be drinking water directly, from what we would call the effluent or from our usage. Already in South Africa, 60 to 65% of our water is reuse, de facto reuse. So we call it de facto because it's indirect. And in terms of our water management strategy in the country, we already had designed as a water scarce country to ensure that we were returning flows into our streams and rivers that was available downstream for others to utilize. So historically, we had a very strong water management environment around managing the quantity and the quality, and you'd see now that the emphasis on the green drop and the blue drop has kind of been propelled because we lost a period of attention and enforcement, during the transformation years. And I think we're going to win that back, because if we are able to get that part right, then we have a better water environment, we have a better ecosystem. But then we also now faced with the next barrier that climate change brings. And that would force many of us to recycle and what we call direct reuse. So, like I said, the industry never had that opportunity. Municipalities have never exploited it. But technology has also evolved to a level that we can now mimic, many treatment systems our bodies do. So we in the technology front, we use the term multi-barrier systems. And if you take Cape Town is a good example of pushing that barrier around going to direct reuse as a future security measure in the city. But the yuck factor, remains there because people associate, flushing the toilet with drinking the water doesn't really is an appeal. But I think to overcome that, sharing the science and the innovation and the processes that are there and available and are used, that hopefully can change that behavior is very, very key. And the key thing is value and behavior change. That people will start understanding the constraints and start understanding that the processes that are used are so advanced that they're even better than what nature can provide us.
Okay, well, we'll see how people actually fall for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for coming into the studio with us.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
I appreciate it.
And thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for the next episode.